Welcome to the Trailbreaker Podcast. Hi, I'm Aaron Feinberg. In this podcast, I explore what it takes to be a trailbreaker. Through intimate conversations with people carving new paths across the landscape of business, art, and sport, we dig in on how to excel across seemingly disparate endeavors. What drives people who manage to succeed multidimensionally? Is it how they think? Is it meticulous planning and follow-through? Or is it some measure of delusional optimism? My guest today is Sasha Dingle, founder and lead meditation teacher for the Mountain Mind Project. She's also a former faculty member at the Goleman Emotional Intelligence Coaching and Training Program and a competitor on the mountain biking Enduro World Series and skiing Freeride World Tour. Sasha's vision is to make training the mind as common as training the body. We talked about how to not hide from your mind, how mindfulness is really about learning to drop back into our bodies, and how when you don't know where you belong, keep breaking trail till you find the place where you can be yourself. Good afternoon, Sasha, and thank you very much for joining the show today.
Hey, Aaron, I'm really excited to get to chat with you.
You are the founder of the Mountain Mind Project, and I feel like that role, that company that you've created is the perfect combination of so many of the things that make up who you are, you know, from the cognitive side of you to the physical, to the, you know, to the super peak performer, to the really grounded present person. And so we're going to get into all the work that you do with the Mountain Mind Project, but I want to back us up a bit and start back in your childhood in Vermont, and would love to hear a little bit about what it was like growing up in Vermont to a mom who was a refugee from Vietnam and a father, and how those experiences sort of pushed you into all the sports and also the contemplative practices that you're up to.
Yeah, I feel so lucky to have grown up in Vermont, just with the sense of place that I experienced from growing up in the way that I did there. So I was very connected to the natural world around me. And as you mentioned, my mom and her entire side of the family, my grandparents and all my aunts and uncles were war refugees, left right at the end of the Vietnam War, kind of hours before tanks crashed through the gates and ended the war. And then the other half of my family was Polish and Lithuanian, pretty recent immigrants, kind of at my great grandparents' level. And I knew nothing of this growing up. There were no stories. I didn't speak Vietnamese. Both sides of my family, I really did not talk about our family history. So I kind of felt like I was this island that just sort of arrived on this planet and, figured things out by exploring the world around me, especially the natural world around me. So in the absence of story, my family really connected through these outdoor sports. So we were, outside mountain biking, hiking, skiing all together. And it's really the thing that my family of four still does together, even though my parents are in their 60s now. And somehow my mom, as a refugee from Vietnam, became a skier. And so it's kind of the language the four of us speak.
That is so cool. And, I think a lot of us who are physical and athletic, and, we find that connection to the way that we move around in space and the way that we understand things, and how we can pull those learnings into other parts of our lives, whether it's our work or whether it's how we show up in relationships. I was talking to a guy yesterday at the trailhead, and he was saying how just he's a better dad, he's a better husband, he's a better boss when he gets out and rides his bike.
Yes. Yeah. I can
And
relate to that.
and so, there's the other side of you, which is the head and the cognition and the presence. So how did that get put in your world as a youngster?
Well, my dad started taking me to yoga class with him when I was 8. I also started in kind of these solo extreme action sports, I guess, when I was pretty young. So I was around 2 when I started skiing and 8 when I started mountain biking. And I really think that was the doorway into my contemplative practice. I recognize not every outdoor athlete or action sports athlete is contemplative in the same way, but um, it was really kind of where I was reflective. It was where I found my main identity that I got to choose. I think there's that piece of being always bridging worlds, being multicultural, multiracial, a female in kind of these male dominated spaces that um, identity is a confusing concept for me at times, but like athlete, I knew that that was it for me. And so I kind of reflected from the world around me, discoveries about myself. Like I'd roll down, a scary line on my mountain bike and I would learn something about me. So that's kind of how I've always approached my sports. And then later on, I found that there's ways to train around that and really leverage those strengths of mind from these methodologies that exist.
And for anybody who doesn't really know or is familiar with that term contemplative practice, what does that encompass?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's I sub it in for meditation, and there's um really the heart of the work that I do through Mountain Mind Project is I provide meditation training, and it's for athletes and people who want to train their mind like an athlete. So my contemplative practice, my meditation practice, that's what I'm talking about.
Thanks for clarifying. And I
Mhm.
know that, as a young athlete in both mountain biking and in skiing, you had talked to me offline a little bit about some of the amazing trainings and coaching, et cetera, that you experienced, but also some times and some ways in which you didn't necessarily get exactly what you were looking for.
Yeah, so, I started competing in both mountain biking and skiing in high school. This was the early 2000s, and the programs that I'm hoping to provide to athletes and other professionals that have to perform in high stakes, high risk environments really didn't exist at that point. I mean, I pull a lot from Eastern psychology or Buddhist psychology. So in these religious settings, some of those methodologies existed. You'll find the Olympic athletes of meditation in those places, but it wasn't in, you know, training your mind, especially in these performance areas in sport. So I worked with a sports psychologist when I was in high school. Um, and that was really cognitive still. So a lot of what I think mindfulness is sort of a confusing term in a way, in that it has so little to do about with our mind. It's so much more about dropping back into our bodies and returning to noticing our senses, all that good information that comes from the signals from the body. So um I was finding that myself in how I would ground myself in the start gate. I would do these movement based things where I could feel my body, and that allowed me to not get pulled into fear or distracted by, thoughts or visions of me winning. And that's more similar to the mindfulness practice than some of the strategies of kind of reframing and more along the line of cognition and sports psychology.
All right, so if I understand, and you can fill in any gaps I skip over. So yoga as a youngster with your dad, and then you move into some sports where you get access to some sports psychology, trainings and exposure, and then you jump into college, and I know you did some studying in the sort of formal education side of things, and then also some work with the Goleman Institute. So, anything I missed in terms of how you've grown yourself as both a practitioner and also as a teacher and a leader of these concepts for other people?
Yeah, the most of my training comes from the Mindfulness Based Professional Training Institute that's through UC San Diego School of Medicine. And then I also, part of that kind of professional development commitment is I go on retreat annually and have a regular practice. So, I have my regular daily practice, 30, 45 minutes meditating on my own, which is a lot of what I teach from is my practice, that exploration, being an athlete of the mind myself. And then in this retreat setting, it's like 9, 10 days, silent retreats, frequently with a teacher who can then sort of push me in these areas where I'm hiding from myself. within my own mind. So I was originally a pre-physical therapy student when I went to college, and uh, because again, like the body is the language that makes sense to me. Um, and then I came across these books that were really intersecting psychiatry and what I consider Buddhist psychology. And that made so much sense because, for me as an athlete too, it was they're body based and they're trainable. That's what meditation, specifically mindfulness meditation, is. Um, and so I knew training. I'd been doing training plans from kind of 14 on powerlifting as an athlete. And yeah, as I alluded to within my family, we don't talk a lot together. Our language together is, kind of these physical activities outside. So again, I think when I was looking at different ways of healing myself or thinking of these people closest to me, we weren't necessarily going to gravitate toward conversation as a way to heal. It was like we needed it to be through our bodies, and so that's really what I'm hoping to provide. The field of mental health with these practices.
And not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. You know, as someone
It's kind of the
who
role.
yeah, sorry. Uh, how does it feel now to be in a position where you're speaking to people and training them and teaching them, through your different courses, or even being on, shows like this, as someone who maybe that wasn't your avenue, or was it something you wish you had in your family life, and now that you have it, it feels better.
It wasn't the avenue at all. I mean, I had started to deepen my own practice and um, started meditating in about 13 years ago, actually in college, when I did switch my major to psychology, and first kind of encountered meditating for these short snippets of time in a class that I took, and then started working more with kind of a spiritual coach, spiritual advisor. At that point, still, it was like 5 minutes a day. That was my practice. And then I had started going on retreat, kind of deepening that practice prior to competing when I qualified to compete on the Freeride World Tour. And so it actually took some sickness, kind of years of losing my sport, for me to really just grab for my yoga and my meditation practice like a lifeline. And that was really over a period of years of some chronic pain and illness. And that was when I actually got the certification through UCSD and started teaching first mindfulness based stress reduction, which is a group course for chronic pain, anxiety, stress. And but no, I mean, my first course that I taught, I was 27, and I had people in the room who were in their 70s. And I was like, why do you think I have anything to offer you? Because so much of this is about exploring your experience, and that comes with life and wisdom of life. But I actually did have something to offer. And I think that there's a lot in this kind of exploration, adventure that comes from being an outdoor athlete that is kind of life lived in acceleration in a way. So I think of it as like exploring and kind of bringing these lessons back down to the valley or the day to day to kind of allow life to be richer and able to engage more fully in life kind of back there.
Yeah, and I guess, that makes a ton of sense. And when you were talking about your family and people not sitting down and talking as much or communicating through that mode, when I listen to you or when you describe things, and some of this stuff is kind of more on the abstract side or esoteric, you have a very clear way of communicating it all, and you do not come across as somebody who didn't grow up with, you sound like somebody who, like, all day long people in your family must have talked. And so I guess, I just wondered, is it comfortable for you now to be in a room and just teach an entire group of people, or do you still wish you were more showing up in the world just through the natural world, or in your body?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, throughout my athletic career, and if I were to pick my ideal, yes, my still way of communicating would be let's go outside and do something together. I love that you incorporate that into your work and training and development. And um, it's Yeah, that is still kind of the natural vocabulary for me. Um, it I really love to practice though, and I really love to teach or just guide and kind of facilitate. And so I think of this role as less about I'm the expert, I'm teaching about something. I mean, I do pull in sports psychology, performance psychology, positive psychology, and it's PowerPoint slides at times, but so much of it is uh, the learning comes from the experience that you're having. It's experiential learning, the same way learning to ski would be or learning to mountain bike, in that I could talk about doing the thing for a while, but like the discovery is going to come when you get out there and do it. And so meditation is the same way. And so that part I love, doing the meditation and then getting to kind of explore what showed up in each individual experience, because it is always uniquely individual.
I want to take us a slightly different direction because I think there's just this really interesting juxtaposition with you. On the one side, you've got pretty high level downhill mountain biker, Freeride World Tour skier. You've got the other side, which is this grounded, mindful perspective, and and all um, the practices and spirituality associated with it. What's it like for you to transition between those two worlds? And I know,
Hmm.
obviously the more grounded and balanced and focused you are, the better you're going to be when you're doing something risky. But just for you, talk us through a little bit about how you switch it on to completely fly down the mountain and do things that a lot of people would be petrified to do.
Yeah. You know, there's something, and I think you'll relate to this as well, being, a skier and a mountain biker and a surfer, that I think, or maybe anybody in kind of their sweet spot in a way. It's like what is perceived as extreme or risky to that individual is the experience is not that. Like I was always very calculated. I mean, okay, my risk tolerance was high. I'll acknowledge that. It sort of comes with the territory with these sports. Um,
But
and yet at the
let
same
me jump in there.
time,
Let me
yeah,
jump in
go
there
ahead.
just for a second. Um, but something drew you to the sports, like something about, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, because I know for me, having similar interests and passions and even a little bit of a similar childhood in some way, there's a side of me that just loves that intensity and that
Mhm.
that outlet, even if I could be in a happy space and it just brings me joy, or I could be frustrated and it's an outlet. So just curious if there's something else in there for you.
Yeah. Of what drew me to this or what continues to draw me to this, because I don't know if I've ever really transitioned away from it. Um, I, hmm, I really do feel like in the absence of a clear identity or somebody who looked like me or sounded like me, or like you said, merges these worlds in a way. I mean, I know that I still get a lot of people will look at me and not assume that I jump off cliffs on my bike or go off jumps, both of those. Um, and so I think there was this experience all along of, for me, like I knew who I was, and it made sense. And I felt that most strongly in my sports in these environments. And so it was like that identity of strength was where I got to take all the armor off. And I wore a lot of armor trying to merge worlds. I mean, I even went to go teach in Vietnam on a US State Department Fulbright grant after college, teaching at a university, wanting to see if I connected to any piece of this culture that I'd inherited but not been handed. Um, and I did. There was a lot of connection there. And at the same time, walking on the street, people would spot, and point out, and I could understand as I began to learn Vietnamese that, they were calling me out as I walked down the street. So I was sort of this feeling of like, oh, okay, well, I guess I don't belong here either. Um, yeah, and so for whatever reason, armored up with actual armor, not like the kind that I put on to protect me from the world, and getting on my bike, putting on my skis, getting to be outside where I can really feel a lot in the outdoors, in the mountains. There's a lot to feel. uh, that was where I felt most like myself. So I don't know why, but it happened that way.
Thank you for sharing that. That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you going there. And in terms of what you've got going on now, so I think for me and hopefully for the listeners, I understand sort of how the Mountain Mind project may have formed, right? So maybe give us a little bit of understanding, at the high level on what you're doing with folks with Mountain Mind project. And of course, they can
Mhm.
find you on the website, they can sign up for your courses, and I do want to talk a little bit about the one you've got coming up. But just holistically, whether I'm an athlete, whether I'm a business person, whether I am, have a strong contemplative practice or it's brand new, give us a kind of a wide ranging sense
Mhm.
of what you're up to with the project.
Yeah. Um, I keep coming back to that. Uh, these meditation trainings are for athletes or for anyone else who wants to train their mind like an athlete. So I have both kind of therapeutic and performance group courses. And then the one-on-one work is like a merging of all of that and more, depending on, what the individual has in their life right now. Uh, and so in the therapeutic version, I mean, I'm seeing people in this full spectrum of life. It might be I'm showing up for this course because my greatest stressor is I'm burning out in my high-paced job, or my greatest stressor is I'm retiring and I have no idea what to do with my time now. And so that diversity is really powerful in a room because it allows people to see that the ways that our minds work together can actually be really similar, even
Mm.
across disparate experience. Um, and so it's sort of this therapeutic, if there's already a stressor identified, something like chronic pain, illness, injury, or performance, which is for, you're really just wanting to leverage these strengths of mind to take whatever you're doing to the next level. And um, I do group courses and I do one-on-one training work. And so we're really personalizing a meditation practice based on your unique history, sort of what's showing up right now with modification, sort of what your outcomes are that you're hoping to get to. Because I really love to think of meditation like exercising in the gym. The instructions are that precise for some of these outcomes. And of course, there's cross training too. But okay, that was a really roundabout way of group courses, one on one work for athletes and others who want to train their minds like an athlete. And for that, it's, I'm working with nurses right now because I think that nurses are basically elite athletes with how physical and mentally demanding those jobs are. So, uh, yeah, I get to kind of pull the learnings from, these frameworks and concepts that relate a lot to an athlete life, because I think it's the life of an explorer in a way, and work with people in kind of high stakes moments in their life, whether that's an event, uh, your career, or I just got this diagnosis with my health and I need something to get through this.
Yeah, I do think that the work that you're doing is so applicable across so many settings as you just mentioned. And I also think that your background, having worked in hospital settings, having worked with kids in schools, working with corporate folk, working with athletes, working with folks who cross over, between those different worlds, it's so helpful. So thank you for what you've been up to, and continued good luck with it all. So I know you've got a upcoming 3-day retreat in August. Is that right?
I do, yes. So it's going to be live online, and the course is called MPeak and it's August 6th through 8th. And so this is really the group program that's around priming for flow, leveraging performance to the next level using these practices and mind trainings. And there's something cool about, I've taught this a couple times online so far, and the aspect that you're in your own home and you kind of set up your retreat space to then have this training over this long weekend is neat, in that then you have all these contextual triggers in a way to kind of prime the things that we're working on. So then you walk around your house, when this is over and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this. And you're kind of brought back into um, some of these learnings and discoveries, I think. So, and again, that's for performers of all types, healthcare providers, executives, athletes. Um, and I've been really thinking about how to kind of meet this unique public health need that I see in mountain communities. We talked about this a little bit, but just this idea that, accidents, avalanches, we have a lot, impact trauma. And then that can kind of compound with any other past traumas that you've experienced. I'm hoping to kind of to meet some of that need with these programs. So that's where I'm starting to think for the fall and this um, and peak program. It's performance, and you get all these other secondary benefits of resilience and self-awareness. And so, yeah.
Well, I do think the mountain communities absolutely need them. They're this beautiful place of joy, and they have their own unique challenges. I think that anyone who's lived in one can see. And I also think that, yeah, whether you are any of the categories that we've talked about today, or more, some more of my traditional corporate clients, I do see the absolute relevance, the high stakes environments, the crisis type of reactivity, the constant overload and burnout, etc. So I would encourage
Yeah.
anybody who has a moment on those dates to join you. And look, I want to thank you for your time, your candor, and if folks want to find you, how do they get a hold of the Mountain Mind Project?
Thanks so much, Erin, for letting me highlight all of that. So, mountainmindproject.com is the website, and Instagram at Mountain Mind Project is where you can learn more about the work that I do, upcoming events and courses, and kind of be in that community of meditators, which I hope is sort of the norm, that we all kind of become these meditation athletes in a way.
Amen. I think we can be all served well if we get more grounded, higher peak performers, and a lot more joy and balance. So thank you very much for your time today, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Erin. Appreciate the time with you.
Take care.
Bye.